Welcome, merry listeners, to the Breaking Script podcast with Lala and Nini.
This is where we discover all the glimmers of this holiday season in the wonder-filled world of Hallmark movies and the occasional Asian drama.
So grab a cup of cheer and let's start Breaking Script. Welcome back to the Breaking Script podcast with Lala and Nini. I'm Lala.
And I'm Nini. And we are full swing. What is this? Weekend 3? I've lost count. Is this weekend 3 of Countdown to Christmas coming up here?
I think
or is it
so.
4?
Oh, maybe it's 4.
Yeah. And who knows? By the time this comes out, I can't do math in my head today. Have you watched any so far?
No.
Yes,
I'm just keeping my head above water with our schedule.
I know. This is where we've been. Actually, it's really funny because I realized I watched so many Hallmark movies around this time last year, or maybe it was closer to Christmas, but I have not had time to this year, but it's still been a mental health break because it's like it's made me stop. So for every Hallmark movie that I watch that I'm actually like taking notes on and writing summaries for, I make sure I make time to watch another one that I don't have to take notes on. Just I've like barely just had my capacity increase a little, and I've noticed it's a lot harder for me to slow down. So slow down. Slower is faster, everyone. That is my affirmation that I'm trying my best to keep in mind. Slower is faster. So anyway, well, since we're not doing boba breaks, I just want to say Mystic Christmas I watched with my 12-year-old. Oh my goodness, she's going to be 12-year-old soon. 12-year-old daughter. Loved the seals.
Which
they
is
stole the show. I know you say you don't like aquariums, but it's actually not like it's like about
I thought it was about pizza, a pizza shop.
Oh my gosh. Can we talk about this? Oh my goodness. I just can't even get over this. The pizza that they highlighted, that's like their special pizza in this movie, was spinach, sauce, and cheese. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Ew. Like that, you could have done red and green, something else. Like, oh my goodness, is it the flash pizza that's like, is it flash pizza that's pepperoni and jalapenos?
I don't know, but that sounds delicious. Just spinach and cheese, not so much.
Okay. In Kansas City, you guys, there's this place called Providence Pizza, and I've known about it for a really long time. There's one downtown. I believe there's still one in Parlor, and there's one in Grandview, Missouri. They have wonderful pizzas, but it wasn't until like 3 weeks ago that I had their pizza called the Thayer Pizza. Have you had this, Lola?
No, never.
I was blown away. I crave it now. It's pineapple pizza with, oh my goodness, I can't remember the cheese. Is it a feta cheese with jalapenos? With, I think, bacon.
That sounds delicious.
It is amazing. I never thought I would love a pizza with pineapple so much. I was blown away. Anyways, go have it. I love that this is taking place of our boba breaks, and that it was inspired by a terrible pizza in Mystic Christmas, which was only about the seals.
That is hilarious.
That was the only thing about that movie that saved it. I couldn't, it wasn't keeping my attention. And then I started to watch Never Been Crisp. I feel like there's one other one, but I can't remember. So I feel behind. But I'm telling myself it's okay.
It's just okay.
Building up for the day that we're just going to binge watch.
Exactly.
A bunch of Hallmark movies. Anyhow, I cannot wait to get to this episode. We are on episode 2 of The Way Home.
Yay.
Let us know if you're watching it along with us. I think it brings in, it's a perfect show to watch as like a countdown to Christmas. You have time and you're not watching Christmas movies, because it is true. So actually, I don't know that you could watch it week by week. Like if it's all like whoever I've recommended it to, literally binge watch with them.
I was gonna say I binge watch this show, so I love it.
I know. So listen along with us. Tell us what you're thinking, your theories along the way. If you have the self-control to watch one at a time, let us know. But anyways, Take it away, Lala. Tell us the title of today's episode 2 of The Way Home, Season 1.
Today's episode is called Scar Tissue. And let's get into the summary. In a panic, Kat drives in search of Alice while on the phone with Brady. Brady regrets not telling Alice about Rachel sooner. Kat can barely breathe. She fears history will repeat itself. Brady tries to calm her and assure her that Alice will return. Although nothing usually seems to faze Dell, she too is out by the cliff's edge searching for her granddaughter. Back in 1999, Alice and Teen Elliot walk through the forest. Alice is determined to get back to present day. Teen Elliot doesn't believe that she's traveled through time. They reach the pond's edge and Alice shares that she jumps in and doesn't return. Then he'll believe her. She jumps in, and as he watches her disappear under the water, he waits a beat before fully freaking out. Did she drown? He jumps in after her, but he comes right back up. In present day, adult Elliot sips coffee on his porch, reminiscing about moments from his teenage years with Alice. He notices her in the distance running through the field, returning home. Kat pulls up to the farmhouse in defeat. As she passes by the porch, she recalls memories of the tragedy from the past. She recalls Colton comforting her as a teenager. Colton tells her that the Landrys should never give up hope. In the house, Kat sees a trail of water. She follows it upstairs and it leads to Alice. Kat is relieved and hugs her while she tries to explain her whereabouts. Alice apologizes and says she was trying to find her way home. Kat mistakes that to mean that she was trying to get back home to her father, Brady. Alice tells her that's not the case, but Kate refuses to listen. She reprimands her with no mercy. Alice begs the question of what happened to her as she just witnessed the happier version of her mom 2 decades ago. Kat grounds her. Downstairs, she meets Dell at the kitchen table. Dell reminds her that she told her Alice would come home. At school, the other teenagers find out that Alice went missing. Zoe and Spencer tell her if she's going through anything that they're there for her, and they're glad she's okay. Spencer shows Alice a picture of an old teen of Kat on the beach with his mother, Monica. Spencer's mother showed it to him and he wanted to show Alice. Back on the farm, Dell is in the yard with her friend Rita, who's still in disbelief that Alice went missing. She questions Dell if Alice had any idea what this would do to her, knowing she'd experienced something similar in the past with Jacob. Dell cuts her short and tells her it's over. Alice is back, it's time to move on. Rita cannot. She doesn't think Dell should be so naive to think her life won't experience challenges now that Alice and Kat are staying with her. Dell has done way too much healing from the past to let them ruin it. Dell shares that someone sent Kat a letter and that's why they are here. Rita assures her that it was not her, but Dell is still suspicious. Inside, Kat revisits a Polaroid on her nightstand of teen Kat and Alice. She can't make out who Alice is. Brady calls wanting to know if Alice has returned. He wants to speak to her, but she's at school. Kat apologizes for not calling him sooner. She tells Brady she's considering returning home as maybe coming back to Port Haven wasn't the best idea. Brady shares that he might have a reason for her to stay as he's been speaking to a publisher who's interested in Kat's work. They want to offer her a book deal to write about her family tragedy. Kat can't comprehend why Brady wants to help her as they are no longer together. She doesn't want his help. Brady asks her to think it over. At school, Alice searches for Elliot. She finds him amongst the teachers and demands they discuss last night. Elliot tells Alice to consider how she approaches him in public. She apologizes and blames it on being panicked. They discover they both know the time-traveling secret. Alice wonders why her mother doesn't recognize her in present day, but if she knew her as a teenager. Elliot tells her memories are mercurial. He also let Alice know that time travel only works for her and no one else. She needs to be wise about when she travels to not be gone for too long in present day, as the family will start to worry. Alice tells Elliot she met Jacob and she can see how special he was. Inside Jacob's room, Kat rummages through her brother's things. Dell interrupts her and tells Kat to put away those memories. Furthermore, Dell says if she's not going to move out and return to her home, then at least make herself useful since she doesn't have a job. Carrying Dell's honey jars, Kat enters the Point Cafe where her old friend Monica works. They were once close friends, but things turned sour over the years. They catch up, but Kat soon discovers that Dell set this meeting up and it is a job interview. Kat is embarrassed and assures Monica she doesn't need a job as she was recently offered a book deal. What she needs is pen to paper and start writing. Monica gives it to her and leaves her to write. At dinner, Kat grills Dell about telling Monica about not having a job. Dell says she was just trying to help. Kat let it be known that she has a book deal to write about the family's past, including Jacob. Del forbids it. Alice demands to know once and for all what happened to Jacob and how did he go missing. Kat doesn't think now is a good time to discuss the details. The atmosphere is cold and Alice is stunned as they used to be such a big happy family. Kat meets up with Elliot in the Landry barn. As they have a glass of wine, Kat leans on his shoulder and wonders if he remembers their friend Alice. Elliot nods. Kat shares that she found an old photo of them in 1999, but Alice is blurry and she can't make her out. Elliot is relieved. Alice searches for details on Jacob online but comes up empty. Her phone rings and it's her dad. Brady tells Alice he's been worried about her, but Alice doesn't buy it because he never asked her to come home because Rachel is there. Brady tells her that there will always be room for her at his house. Alice fights back tears and hangs up. Her Google search never loads. It's dark but doesn't stop Alice from going back to the pond to escape the present day. She jumps in and disappears but comes back up. She dives in again but resurfaces for a second time. She panics and wonders why she isn't being transported to 1999. Gasping for air, she makes her way back to the shores and begins to cry. Alice makes her way home. She meets Del, who's surprised to see that she's awake so early. She hands her a box of produce and they head to the farmer's market. As Del sets up her stall, many patrons greet her warmly. Alice notices how much of a neighborhood staple Del is. Byron Groff, who runs the Herald newspaper, approaches Del's stall ready to shop. Alice notices how much happier and fun Del is to be around, much like her younger self. However, she's not that happy with her own family. Still in her bathrobe, Kat finds herself in Alice's room. A familiar book catches her eye. It's Alice in Wonderland, one of her favorites as a teen. She grabs it and turns pages to view the passage that she once underlined. It's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then. Kat wonders why she highlighted that. A note left by Alice catches her eye. At farmer's market, Del's call. Kat heads to the farmer's market. As she approaches, she has flashbacks of her teenage self with her father Colton standing in the same market. They're handing out flyers in search of her brother Jacob, who went missing. Del's greeting Kat throws her out of the memory. Kat confronts Del about bringing Alice to the market when she was grounded. Kat doesn't want Del to interfere with the way she raises her daughter. Alice and Rita watch their back and forth. Alice asks Rita to tell her what really happened to Jacob, and Rita refuses. Alice finds the location of the Herald newspaper. Byron welcomes her. She's ready to solve the mystery herself. Kat goes to visit her father's grave. There she meets Danny, a cemetery worker who is Jacob's childhood best friend. She wants to say hello, but he is hesitant to say it back. He walks off to leave her alone. Kat has a moment with her father, only to notice next to his tombstone is Jacob's. Kat is shocked. She now understands that Del is no longer considering him missing but dead. Though the Landrys shouldn't give up, Del has. Back at the Herald, Alice is on a mission. She searches through old newspaper articles to find out what happened to Jacob. She sees headlines. Local boy goes missing. Police have no leads. She sees pictures of his bike with the police tape surrounding it. She tries putting the pieces together only to be interrupted by Del, who tells her it's time to go. As they drive to the farmer's market together, Alice apologizes and tells her that she just needed to know. They pull over by the White Cross close to the farm. Del points out that it is the place where her husband died, only 3 months after Jacob went missing. Del tells Alice she lost the whole world in 3 months. Del tells her she deserves to know what happened, but to never speak of it again once she finally knows. Kat is in the kitchen at table while Alice and Del walk in. She wants to know why Del decided to declare Jacob dead. Del tells Kat it was time. After she got his death certificate, Del wrote Kat the letter but never mailed it. Del tells Kat that there's an upcoming memorial scheduled for Jacob, planned before she arrived. Inside the Landry's barn, Kat takes a moment to herself. Elliot interrupts. Kat asks if he knew about the memorial. Elliot consoles her as she is grieving Jacob, a wound made fresh since returning home. Later that night, Kat finds Alice at the kitchen table. She can't sleep, obviously troubled by the events surrounding the family. Alice tells Kat that she wants to stay in Port Haven to get to know her family, even the ones who are gone. That makes Kat smile. Del gets dressed for the memorial while having sweet flashbacks with her son Jacob. Meanwhile, Alice finds a family heirloom on the coffee table. Kat explains every time a new family was born, they add their name to the list, and when they died, the date would be written next to it. At the memorial, Del, Kat, Alice, Elliot, and Rita stand in the rain. Del delivers a heartwarming eulogy while holding a blue balloon. When she's done, she let the balloon go, and they all watch it with tears in their eyes. Kat is on the porch chatting with Brady. She tells him she's not leaving Port Haven as it's an important day for her to stay. Brady reminds her of the book deal. That doesn't sway her as she realizes at the moment it's about her family rather than her own goals. Alice stands at the pond's edge, ready to jump, but Elliot catches her. She wants to see Jacob and hopes the pond will accept her this time. He waits as she jumps. To his delight, she doesn't resurface. Now that the memorial has happened, it is time to put Jacob's name in the family heirloom. But Dell can't bring herself to do it. Kat does it for her. They embrace. In 1999, Alice meets Jacob and teen Kat just in time to join family dinner. And that is the episode.
Good. So many feels.
I know. Okay, Nini, what did you give the overall rating for this episode?
I mean, I feel like it's going to be pretty consistent with episodes unless it's like a number bigger than 10, because for me, this episode was a big 10.
Yeah, this was a really good one. This is like, if you're not hooked by episode 1, you are definitely hooked by episode 2.
Exactly. So we're just going to dive into it. Instead of our typical breaking script segments, we have Home Sweet Home, Surprising Detours, Dead Ends, and The Way We See It. And don't worry, if you want some of these and a way to journal it, we will have The Way Home journal edition coming out soon with some more additions to the journal that will be available. So be looking for that. But anyways, in our breakdown, Home Sweet Home, it's the same thing. Glimmer is what we love, breaking down the romantic and family relationships. But Lala, we have some new characters to introduce here.
I know.
So I have a list of them. This is a section where we're introducing new characters. In case you didn't catch it, we have Dell's friend Rita, which I'm going to talk about that. That one I have some stuff to say. Monica, who is Dell and Elliot's high school friend who now owns the cafe in town, who I thought it was really strange. The way that she says she's super close with Elliot almost made it sound like she wants Kat to be jealous?
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Right? It was so weird how she said it, but maybe it's just that like high school mean girls thing.
Yeah.
And she calls him L, but not in this episode, maybe. Sorry, that's a spoiler alert. And Byron, who seems like he's into Dell, he calls her Delilah, who runs the Herald, the town's newspaper and archives.
Mm-hmm.
And then Danny. This is
Mysterious
the way we
Danny.
see it. I know. Jacob's friend, who is now an adult, of course, and works on the grounds of the cemetery. I mean, what is going on? So, what are your glimmers here, Lala?
Ooh, okay. I love when Alice came home after being gone for 12 hours and Kat doesn't understand when Alice is like, I was trying to get home, and it's just this miscommunication.
Yes.
And first it hits you really hard when Alice looks at her mom and says, what happened to you? And it was like this perspective shift, like you see it in real time. I thought they did such a great job of really like emulating the emotions and really believing like that's how you would feel if you went and you saw your mom back then and then now.
Totally.
It just felt so relatable. You know what else I really liked is that you're starting to see Alice's appearance change. Like in the first episode, she's wearing really heavy makeup, she's wearing a piercing, and she starts to soften, like as her heart begins to soften. I love that they reflect that in her overall appearance. I thought that was great. I thought it was so funny when Alice walks into the classroom and says to Elliot, we need to talk about last night in front of all those teachers, and like his face. And it's just like, what in the world? Like if that was real life, teachers would be like questioning him. I thought that was really funny. There was just so many things that I loved about this episode.
Totally. I was the same. All the feels around, in the beginning, especially when Alice is still missing.
Yeah.
I thought the cinematography, the way that they did it again was brilliant. All the flashbacks that they have. I love that the episode starts and you don't see Kat at all. You just hear her voice. That's the cold open.
Yeah.
She's on the phone. She's calling Allie, like just desperate mom who's panicking because her child's missing and she doesn't know where they are. Like, and then it's juxtaposed with in the 1990s, Alice, current day Alice is in the 90s and she's with Elliot in the barn. They both fell asleep and she wakes up and the first word out of her mouth is mom. And that was like, oh, that got me in the feels. But also, I don't know if you caught it, but when Elliot is trying to ask Alice to prove that she time traveled and she's from the future, did you catch the joke?
No.
Where he goes, "We'll prove it," and she goes, well, there's no way that guy becomes president." That's what Elliot says. But here's the thing.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that is funny.
I'm pretty sure that was meant to be a Trump joke.
Oh, totally.
Okay, but
It
they're
didn't
in
come out.
Canada.
Oh, funny.
So, I mean,
See, like even when things are in Canada, it's still fully American. Like they just can't get away from it.
Anyway, could go either way. Elliot seeing Alice run through the field back home and then the title, like, I mean, what a brilliant cold open.
It really was.
All the feels, like, just such an epic opening. I just can't say enough about just the cinematography, the writing, the timing, the rhythm, the vibe, like even the coloring.
It's true.
Right, that they do, and just how I feel like there's slight color differences in the 90s and current day.
Yeah. The 90s is almost like a rosy feel. And in real life, it almost feels a little bit grayed out. And very cold. Yeah, you're so right.
But then there's times where it's like they're so similar you can't tell the difference, right? I'm sure it's intentional, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, and then also for me, I don't know if you wore the same clothes in the 90s, but for me in the 90s, it was all the feels where you had those dresses with the t-shirts underneath, the spaghetti strap dresses. I'm pretty sure the summer when you were here, that's exactly what we bought for my 11-year-old. I was like, oh my gosh, even the same sunflowers. Like I low-key wanted her to just buy one.
I love the clothes. It's so reminiscent. They did such a great job.
I know, like I'm pretty sure the butterfly clips are coming out soon. But yeah, those, I mean, there's so many. I could go on and on just about glimmers.
I know.
Right? Like, and I'm really torn about Dell's friend Rita. And obviously there's going to be more in future episodes, but even in this episode, if I isolated this episode by itself, I was really torn. Like, I wasn't sure what to think. She obviously seemed like a good friend because she was alongside Dell, obviously during really hard times and in this process of giving Dell space and encouraging her, but not pushing her too hard to move on. Hopefully that's what kind of what it seems like in this isolated episode. But at the same time, she seems a little, I don't know, harsh. She has an edge to her.
You're right.
She's not a soft feeling friend. But anyway, what do you have about do you have more glimmers or do you want to go into relationships?
I think the only one that I still think we're learning about and we're like working through in real time with them is the relationship with Kat and Dell. Like,
yeah,
it is just so riddled with the past hurt and pain that they cannot function in a relationship.
Right.
Because they're so broken in their own way. Like I thought the fight where Dell says to Kat, like, this is a book I'm trying to close and stop trying to open it. Like that line and just the fight between Dell and Kat, the emotions were so real and so raw because you think it's a daughter coming to her mom, wanting these answers, wanting to process, but it's a mom who just cannot. Yeah. And you just feel that. And so clearly, and as the story unfolds, everything becomes a lot more clear. But I think we're going to have this tension in the relationship for a while.
Yeah.
And I mean, in real life, that is a really hard dynamic. Like, you really do need therapy. You really need help to work through that, especially when one person really wants to close a chapter and someone is not ready.
Yeah, it's so hard because in those times, it's like we wish our family that has been there for us and is, we would expect for them to be safe places for us. Like we're expecting something out of them that they don't have the capacity to give. Like it's
Yeah.
just not there. And that's when there's so much misunderstanding. I definitely feel that. Like that was probably one of the first things for me, like learning how our family and my recognizing it in myself first, but like seeing patterns of codependency and being like, oh my gosh, I have to learn to manage my expectations in relationships.
Mm.
That was like a really hard thing because I felt it when, like, I could feel it. It was like tugging on my heart when Kat was like, can't you just sit here with me and talk about him?
Oh my gosh. That was, I literally have that written down. My heart broke in that moment.
Yeah.
You just
Because she
feel
just so
it.
badly, yeah, you do. You so badly need it. And Dell seems, because I can relate, on both ends of
Yeah.
like as a daughter wanting that. But then as a mother and just thinking of like my own mother and grandmother who have passed, like how hard it is for me as a mother when I'm in pain to process something incredibly vulnerable with my children. Like this is happening in real time today, guys. Like I have to have a hard conversation, very vulnerable with my children, like right after this recording. Um, and in the last few days, like my daughter's like, Mommy, what is wrong with you? Like, I'm asking you questions and you're just saying okay, but you're not hearing me.
Mm.
And it's because I'm processing something painful
Yeah.
and I'm having trouble staying present and I want to talk to you about it, but I have to handle, like, I don't even have a
Yeah.
grasp on it. So how am I going to talk to you about it? And you can just see so much of that in Dell's face, like even
Yes.
in the opening when she's taking the call, like, oh, it's gonna be fine. And when she hangs up, like she's just barely holding it together.
Yeah.
Like she can't go there because she's afraid she's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
And I relate so much. Like I can think back to actual circumstances and memories of situations between my mother and myself, but also between my mother and her mother.
Hmm.
And it's like we're reaching out for one another, but like I know we don't have video, so you can't see me, but it's like your arms are reaching out for one another, but you're just missing each other.
Yeah.
And it's like
Totally.
so painful. So so many feels, but so, so real. I love that even though the episode was full of that angst,
Mm-hmm.
after so much conflict, they put Jacob's name in the family heirloom book together.
Yeah.
Like what a precious, tender moment.
It really was. Not movie, this show, it is like, again, I know we've said we love it so much, but I feel like you can really process a lot of your life through this movie. Has
Yeah.
such tender, real, raw moments. Like, even though you might not physically be doing the exact same thing that they're doing in the movie, I think we can all relate to those moments and those things so
Mhm.
deeply.
Yeah, 100%. And I love how, like, I don't know, well, no other show comes to mind right now. I'm sure they're out there, but just how, like, the angst of the conflict and the trauma is juxtaposed with the joy of,
Yeah.
like, this family, this couple that's so in love, and
Yeah.
this family that, like, sings and plays music together. And not only that, but Kat and Jacob have quite a significant age difference.
Yeah.
Yet their bond is still like undeniable.
Mhm.
And even after decades have passed, like she's still, I know you're still family, but the way that they portrayed it and wrote it in here, I love it so much. I love that this episode ends with Alice reuniting with Kat and Jacob in a
Yeah.
field and staying for
Yeah.
dinner with the family. Like, I don't know if you heard the music. So
Oh,
actually, if you
it's
go
so
on
good.
Spotify, I'll link it in the show notes. There's actually a
A
Spotify
playlist?
there's a
Yay.
playlist for the Way Home music because it is fantastic song choices. I mean, obviously I'm a fan because it's a lot of 90s vibes, but literally when they're running in the field in the last scene, the song is saying, I want to fly away with you. And it's like the picture for me of like ultimate freedom is like frolicking in a field with like your arms out. Like
Yeah.
I want to run through a wheat field and frolic in the golden hour. Like, ugh, all the feels. What else you got here? Are we ready to move on?
I think we're good. I think we should move on.
All right, our second segment is surprising detours, where in addition to unhealthy behaviors or coping mechanisms, we also talk about the surprises because I promise you there are surprises in every episode.
Seriously.
I mean, a really small one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was really interesting. I was like, wait a second. It wasn't until this time watching it, I was like, hey, the family heirloom isn't a Bible, it's a farmer's almanac.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I mean, it makes sense because they have a
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah. It's been in their family for many generations. Makes sense. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No. Okay, what surprised me was that, and you kind of get this in the first episode, but it's confirmed in the second, that Elliot knows everything the whole time, which is mind blowing because it feels very much like Alice is doing this alone. And then to kind of realize like, oh, Elliot's known his whole life and has been waiting for this moment and this time. Like my mind,
his whole life. Like
he knew this was going to happen.
yeah, like did he know when to move back home? Like,
oh, I
do you know what
never
I'm
even
saying?
thought about
Like,
that.
did he know approximately what year because of the fact that he knew how old Alice was gonna be?
Did his marriage end because of this?
This all of these questions. We're gonna get to it in the way we see it because I mean,
oh my gosh, I never put that together, to be honest.
Because he probably would have remembered how old Alice was when she first started, because it only, well, we can't spoiler alert the rest of it, but he would have remembered how old she was.
You're so right.
When she visited, and did he move back? And how weird, like, what if he would have stayed married? You're right. Like, did he divorce because of, anyways, so many things. I think the biggest surprise for me, I'm pretty sure like I exclaimed out loud.
Oh,
I'm probably said, what? When she jumps into the pond and she doesn't time travel. I was so confused. Like,
which I thought was really good. I thought that was a really great, like unexpected twist that it didn't just happen.
Yeah. And that apparently she's the only one that can time travel. Like, what? Like that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, there's just so much. I think the rest of mine, I feel like there's more surprises, but the rest of mine are about
a big one.
Yeah.
Is that Kat named her daughter after her best friend. That is a loop that is like so bizarre. That Alice is named after Alice, who was the daughter the whole time. The daughter from the past, the daughter from the future. Like, you got to really like think about that because it's kind of crazy.
We're going to talk about it in the way we see it more, but the fact that even Alice knew that her mom named her after her best friend when she was younger was and like,
then hey, realizing what? I'm the best friend. I just love that she was her mom's best friend. That's so cool.
I know. So many feels. It's so amazing. So much perspective. I go into discussing unhealthy behaviors or coping mechanisms, but do you have any more of like the surprises that you wanted to mention?
No, so go ahead.
All right. So obviously my first one is pretty much in the beginning where it's clear that Kat seems to have panic attacks. Like she's starting to have a panic attack in the car. She started to have one when I think it was towards the end when Elliot was comforting her. But she's having a panic attack while she's driving. And yes, it's great that Brady told her to pull over, but he's yelling at her. You literally cannot yell at someone when they're having a panic attack.
I know.
I wish this was part of like life skills 101. I think it's really important to learn how to recognize when someone's having a panic attack. My son had one and there were adults around him that didn't know what was happening. And he didn't know what was happening. It was very scary. You have to diffuse and distract. Like And don't say things like calm down. It's just not
That doesn't
helpful.
help.
Yeah, that makes it
I
worse.
also know firsthand it does not help.
No, it's so not helpful. Um, but yeah, that was just so much of the interactions, obviously, between Kat and Brady. And if this is your first time tuning in, we have a segment in our usual breaking script segments where in the yeah, don't go chasing waterfalls, which for the way home is called surprising detours. Sometimes we'll pull out the omo nardar, which is a narcissistic radar. Because once you start having awareness, you start wondering like, and we have already established that Brady is a narcissist here. And so it just continues in this episode. And yeah, it was especially in heightened situations, narcissists can manifest very differently, but here where she's panicking while Alice is missing, and there's kind of like a this conversation. Oh, sorry, fast forward a little bit because they have another conversation where Alice is back and Kat feels bad. You can even see it on her face, like when she calls him, like, oh, she feels terrible that she didn't call him. And he's like, you had time to take her to school. And she's talking about like, well, maybe we should just come back because this was obviously too much for Alice. For him to say in midst of this traumatic event, I may have a reason for you to stay and it's a business deal. Like, what?
The whole thing, yeah, that was my biggest thing is just, I mean, I talked about it in episode 1. Brady is my least favorite in general. I don't like who they cast for Brady, and just as like who he is as a character, he is so selfish and like is not in tune at all with Alice or his daughter. Like he just is making her feel, the fact that he was making her feel guilty for not calling him in that moment, like she was literally, like you said, having a panic attack and he's like flipping the switch on her as if like she's now in the wrong. I don't know, it just, that whole, yeah,
the gaslighting. Well, but not only that, like she's having a panic attack, and it's not just gaslighting, it's like full on attack where it's like he says things like, well, you didn't have a story until you left. Like, ew, what is wrong with you? And that's not true because also Jacob passed a long time ago, but that happens a lot in conversations with narcissists, which is why gray rock people, gray rock method, look it up. There's no logic or reason. Like, don't engage, don't let it bother you. Gray rock. Because he says you didn't have a story till you left. Like, how's that working out for you? Like, how rude.
right?
I watch Full House too much. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much. So let's move on to the dead ends. This is a section of what we didn't like. Usually it's like plot holes, continuity issues. We're not going to find a whole lot in The Way Home. They just do such a fantastic job. Usually for other Hallmark movies, this is the
Our largest
boy with
section.
the poodles. Yeah, this is our largest, most extensive section. But I did have a question. Like,
Okay.
when Alice says to Elliot in the 90s, you believe me in the future. The amount of confidence she said that was a little shocking because it's like she hasn't even gone back yet. She's still stuck in 1990s and she doesn't know how to get back. So all she's basing that off of is she remembers Elliot saying anytime, any place, especially anytime, and he emphasizes anytime if you go back and watch that. But as a disgruntled teenager who doesn't want to be living on her family's farm, I doubt that would have stuck out so much to the point where she was like, oh my gosh, that means he believes me in the future. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like it wasn't as significant in reality that she made it in the 90s or whatever.
Also, I just it made me really sad. And me, I mean, it's not like I think they should not include it, but when she tells Elliot, like,
Oh,
ew, you're not my dad, you're my science teacher,
oh, I
it made
hated
me
that. Oh,
so
I know.
sad.
I just kept thinking like you're ruining his life. Like now he
Yes.
knows. I know why they did that in the sense of like it defines his life. But I'm just like,
Absolutely.
oh, couldn't you have done that to like Monica, the mean girl? Like, why Elliot?
I know it's so true, but and you're right, like they had to include it because that's the moment you know and you see it in Elliot's face that he's in love with Kat.
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
okay, so the part where Alice has come back, and I understand that Kat needs to like unwind and it's just been really traumatic and hard. But she and Elliot are having wine in the barn together, but her head is on his shoulder like immediately.
I
Is
know.
this weird? Yes, it is. And she says it's easy to fall into old habits. Like, what does this even mean? But it just doesn't feel okay. Like, it was very uncomfortable
I
and
actually, funny enough, I wrote like a little note about that. How recently I have uh reconnected with like old friends from high school. And watching that, I just kind of thought about the fact like I've had this reconnection and like would I feel comfortable to sit beside them and put my head on their shoulder? Not at all. Not at all. I mean, and I'm also married and they're married, but I was just kind of thinking like, well, like, if I was in this place in life, but no. Like
no,
that was a disconnect for me.
very much
But it was
so.
like going back
So
to that first
funny.
episode where Kat was so touchy-feely with Elliot when she first sees him and I'm like,
It's true.
yeah. Anyways,
It's too much, too much. I don't know. Is that the Hallmark bend of this? I'm not sure. Um, and yeah, the only other thing that I have here is to reemphasize um telling someone to calm down doesn't actually calm them down. It's the same thing with don't overreact,
oh,
which
I
I'm pretty
hate
sure
that.
that's Dell to Kat. Um, but I mean, I understand. I've been guilty. I probably say calm down a lot. I mean, I'm a mom of 6 kids. It happens. Oh, and then I have a last little thing. So in the barn, there's this. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord have mercy. So in the barn, there's this thing that looks like a bed,
Oh yeah.
but it's actually just a very large
Bale of
hay bale
hay.
because it's not like the size of a bed, but there's like a pillow and blanket to make it look like a bed. And then there's like I just don't understand the barn.
I
And
agree
why
because
is
I
it
was
still
like, is Elliot living in the barn as a kid?
no, but they're there. That's the scene where they're drinking wine.
I
And it's
know.
like so like why?
I have no idea.
It's really confusing. I
Doesn't
don't
make sense.
understand. But anyway, I think we can move on unless you have anything else in that
Nope.
section.
That was it.
Okay. The Way We See It, which is my favorite one. I think it's going to be even more of my favorite one for season 2 when we're watching these weekly, but this is theories. So The Way We See It, this is going to be my favorite segment, I think, for season 2. Because for season 1, I'm trying really hard. This is theories, what we think happens. I'm trying to do this with each episode as if I've isolated this episode by itself and I haven't seen all 10. So, well, we find out in this episode, but I remember the first time I watched it. And when Kat is having a panic attack in the car and she's talking to Brady and she stops and looks out the car window at the cross, I remember thinking there's probably more to that than that just being at first you don't know, like, is that Jacob's death? You don't know, right?
Yeah.
Until Dell confirms it at the very end. But it felt more significant.
Mm-hmm.
Um Also the whole I know that we don't talk about it a lot because this series does such a great job um diverting our attention and we have so many other questions and so much other suspense. But the fact that the pond works for Alice but not Elliot made me think about the witch from the beginning. And also the fact that Alice didn't show up in the Polaroid.
Mm.
So it was like, oh, so is she the witch because she's fuzzy in the Polaroid, and also she can time travel but not Elliot?
Mm.
See, what else do you have here?
I think I'm mostly focused on Jacob. And my thing when I watch this is I'm so drawn to what happened to Jacob. One of the
Mm,
theories that I thought was that maybe Kat was somehow involved in his disappearance and maybe he was like abducted.
yes. Yes, especially
You're at the
when
fair and they're
is
handing
it
out the flyers. It really gives this ominous
mm,
feel of like he's been taken. And so
mhm.
when I watched this, it was like I'm searching for clues as like who could have taken him. I was
Yeah.
mostly very focused on
Yeah,
that.
that makes so much sense, especially when Dell says something towards the end, because Kat started to say like, you blame me because you think it's my fault, but she doesn't get the words
Yeah.
out. So yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, well, the only thing I have left is, why does Alice have the only red umbrella amongst the black ones
Ooh,
at the
I
memorial?
did not even pick that out. Wow.
Yeah, it just made me wonder. It's just so curious. So curious that the pond has no explanations, only rules. And also the fact that Elliot says, no matter what I did, I knew I would end up back here. Like, and the fact that it's like he sees all,
Mm-hmm.
it's like he's the great
Wizard of
wizard.
Oz.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It makes, yes, like
He
it's
does it
little.
kind of does have that feel. And it's actually like because it's
Yeah.
interesting because in the 90s he's very insecure and then in present day he has this different type of confidence. So we'll see what
Makes
happens.
you
Yep.
wonder, is there something sinister there? If you listen to the Deck the Hallmark podcast reviews on the way home, they are hilarious. The hilarious theories don't come in, I don't think, until the next couple episodes. But if you listen, answer us, give us feedback in the show notes. Let us know what you think, what your theories are. But do we have any ending final thoughts or favorite quotes?
Oh, I love at the end of episode 2, Kat is talking to Brady about not taking the book deal and staying in Port Haven. And she says this line, she says, maybe I'll get to see the best part of my history repeat itself.
Ooh, so
I loved that.
good. I love it. I had all the feels. Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorite books. My not entire, but a lot of my psychology class in high school was based on Alice in
Mm.
Wonderland, the animated version, because it was Lewis Carroll's dream. But it's funny because we didn't actually study his real dream. So interesting. Nevertheless, I love the quote, it's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then, the one that is underlined in the book.
Mm.
But my favorite quote that's in the Johnny Depp Tim Burton version of Alice in Wonderland, which are like at the top of like probably top 10 of my favorite movies, both 1 and 2, is when Alice asks the Mad Hatter, am I mad? And he answers, probably, but all the best people are.
I love that.
One of my all-time favorite quotes. So please listen to our episodes and write a review
Yes.
on what you think of our episodes and even just the premise of our show, our podcast. So thanks for listening, and be sure to join us for more Countdown to Christmas as well as the Way Home episodes.
Thanks for breaking script with us. Don't forget to follow so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.